Hey there. Welcome back to Scary Times. The clock just struck midnight, and there's something unsettling about tonight's atmosphere. I've got some terrifying tales that'll make you question every shadow in your room. If you enjoy getting scared, with us, hit that subscribe button and join our haunted family. Now turn off your lights, put on your headphones, and let Scary Times guide you through tonight's collection of spine-chilling stories. My name is Dr. Lin Wei Cheng. For 5 years, I've worked as an emergency physician at Renai General Hospital, a sprawling concrete maze on the eastern edge of Taipei. The hospital was built during the Japanese colonial era, so it's old, full of history and a little bit haunted by its past. By day, the place is a whirlwind. You hear the shuffle of feet, pagers going off everywhere, and the constant wail of ambulance sirens. But at night, when the halls empty out and the fluorescent lights start flickering, something changes. The line between the living and the dead gets blurry. I've always thought of myself as a rational guy. I grew up in a family of doctors down in Kaohsiung, a big port city in southern Taiwan. My dad, a stern and brilliant physician, always said superstition was just a crutch for people who didn't understand science. That mindset carried me through med school, residency, and all the chaos of the ER. It helped me make quick, clear decisions, even when things got messy. My apartment is just 10 minutes from the hospital. Small, practical, nothing fancy. There's a bed, a desk buried under medical journals, and a kitchen I barely use. The building itself is new, squeezed between a 24-hour convenience store and a centuries-old temple. That temple is always burning incense day and night. The mix of modern and traditional never really bothered me. Honestly, I hardly noticed it until recently. Working in emergency medicine means weird hours and non-stop pressure. Most nights, I'm either stitching up cuts or fighting to save someone's life. The adrenaline is addicting, but the losses pile up. Still, nothing in my training prepared me for what happened 3 months ago. It started on a night that just bled into morning. There was a terrible traffic accident, and suddenly our ER was flooded with patients. We worked in a haze, blood, sweat, urgency everywhere. By 3 a.m., which, by the way, is known in Taiwan as ghost hour, when people believe the boundary between the living and the spirit world is at its thinnest, the chaos finally eased up. I slipped away to the staff room for a quick coffee, enjoying the rare quiet. The hospital felt eerily silent. Just the distant beep of monitors and the occasional squeak of a nurse's shoes on linoleum. On my way back to the ER, I spotted something odd. A patient chart lying right in the middle of the hallway. Not unusual after a wild night, but something about it made me pause. I bent down to pick it up and saw the name, Chen Yiling. That name hit me hard. Less than an hour earlier, we'd pronounced a patient by that name dead. She was a young woman, victim of the accident, severe head trauma. I opened the chart thinking maybe it was just a coincidence. But no, it was her chart, with the exact time of death I'd written myself. I'd handed her paperwork to the head nurse. How did it end up here in an empty hallway? Back at the nurse's station, I asked, "Did anyone come looking for Chen Yiling's chart?" The nurse frowned. "No, her paperwork's right here. I've been getting it ready for the morgue." I looked down. Sure enough, there was a chart on her desk, identical to the one in my hand, even my signature and the time of death. The nurse's face went pale. "That's not possible," she whispered. We checked the system. Only one Chen Yiling admitted, that night. No explanation for the duplicate chart. We shrugged it off as a clerical error. Maybe someone made a copy and forgot about it. But I couldn't shake the weird feeling. 3 nights later, I was on another late shift. Around 2 a.m., I headed to the basement to grab some supplies. Down there, you've got storage rooms, laundry, maintenance, and at the far end, the morgue. The air is always colder and the lights never seem to work right. As I was heading back upstairs, I heard it. The unmistakable squeak of a gurney rolling across the floor. At that hour, the basement should have been empty except for, the occasional security guard. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. The sound kept going, echoing down the corridor toward the morgue. I tried to be logical. Maybe the night attendant was moving a body. but something pushed me to follow. As I got closer, the temperature dropped even more. The squeak stopped, replaced by this faint whispering, like someone murmuring just out of earshot. The morgue door was open just a crack, letting a sliver of light spill into the hallway. I pushed it open, expecting to see the attendant at work. The room looked empty, stainless steel tables shining, a wall of refrigerated compartments all closed except one which was open just a little. That wasn't normal. Protocol says they all have to be shut. I stepped closer, telling myself to just close it and leave. That's when I heard the whispering again from inside the compartment. My medical training told me there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe air vents. I pulled the compartment open, expecting an empty tray. Instead, I found myself staring at the body of Chen Yiling. She'd been dead for 3 days. That alone wasn't strange, but her eyes were open, staring right at me. I remembered closing them myself. I jumped back, heart pounding. Maybe her eyes had opened during transport. Rare. But it happens. I stepped forward, planning to close them again, when her hand twitched. I froze. 3 days dead. I told myself, it was just a post-mortem reflex. Sometimes muscles move after death. But then her lips moved. Against all logic, I leaned in and heard her whisper, "Return what was taken." I bolted from the morgue, not stopping until I reached the bright, noisy ER. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? I tried to bury myself in work, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, I requested her file, said it was for a case review, but really I just wanted answers. 26 years old, no medical history, severe trauma. Nothing unusual except for one thing. In her personal effects, a jade Buddha pendant on a red cord marked "to be returned to family." But I remembered seeing it around her neck in the morgue. In Taiwan, jade Buddha pendants aren't just jewelry. They're family heirlooms, often blessed by monks at famous temples like Longshan or Xingtian. People believe they protect you from harm. My own grandmother never took hers off, not even for a shower. I checked with the property office. The clerk frowned. That's weird. The system says the pendant was logged in, but it's not with her other things. Could someone have picked it up already? I asked. She shook her head. No, nothing's been released yet. Her family is coming tomorrow. So the pendant was missing. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chen Yiling's face, her eyes open, her whisper echoing in my mind. Around 2 a.m., I gave up and left my apartment, somehow ending up walking toward the hospital. The night was unusually cold, with mist curling over the streets. Outside the ER entrance, I saw a figure, a young woman in a hospital gown. My first thought was that a patient had wandered out. I called, "Excuse me, are you okay?" She turned. Even through the mist, I recognized Chen Yiling's face. She raised her hand, pointed at me, then vanished into the hospital. I rushed inside and told security what I'd seen. The guard checked the cameras. No sign of any woman. In a hospital gown. No one had come in or out except me. "You look exhausted, doctor," he said. "Maybe you should get some rest." But I couldn't let it go. I found myself drawn to the basement, to the morgue. The corridor was dim, silent. Everything seemed normal, until I spotted a button on the floor near an exam table. It was old, a bit bigger than the usual, with a unique pattern. I picked it up, feeling uneasy. Suddenly, I heard metal sliding, a compartment opening. Number 23, Chen Yiling's. On her chest, the missing jade pendant. I reached for it. The lights flickered wildly. I pulled my hand back and they steadied. "What do you want?" I whispered, feeling both foolish and afraid. No answer, just a deeper chill. I reached again. This time the lights went out completely. In the darkness, a voice whispered right by my ear. "Not you. The one who took it." I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The pendant was still there. "Who took it?" I asked, barely able to speak. The air grew even colder. My breath turned to mist. The pendant glowed faintly green. The one who wears white, the whisper came, from everywhere and nowhere. Suddenly the light snapped back on. The pendant was gone. I closed the compartment and ran, not stopping until I reached the main floor. Only then did I start to process what had happened. The one who wears white. In a hospital, that could be anyone. A doctor, nurse, lab tech, even a cleaner. But the button I'd found kept nagging at me. I looked at it more closely. It was bigger than the standard ones, with an old-fashioned design. The next morning, I brought it to HR. Do you know which department uses these? The assistant studied it. This is from the old uniforms, at least 20 years ago. No one should be wearing these anymore. Could someone have kept an old coat? Maybe, but it wouldn't be hospital-issued. I started asking around. Some of the veteran staff recognized the button right away. Much better quality than the new ones, said Nurse Chen. Dr. Huang in pathology might have one. And there's old Wang, the morgue attendant. He never throws anything away. I checked with Dr. Huang first. He laughed. I'm frugal, but not that frugal. These buttons are from before my time. That left old Wang. He'd worked at Rene for over 40 years. I made my way down to the basement, rehearsing what I'd say. The morgue was empty. I noticed a storage room, the door slightly open. Inside, a locker was hanging open. There was a white coat with the old buttons. On a shelf, I saw a row of jade pendants, all on red cords. I reached for one, but a voice stopped me. Looking for something, Dr. Lin? I turned. Wang stood in the doorway, his face hard to read. He wore a coat with the same old buttons. I'm looking for Chen Yiling's pendant, I said. He didn't blink. I don't know what you mean. Then what are these? I pointed to the pendants. Gifts. Some families are grateful for my care. And Chen Yiling's family? Did they give you hers? A flicker of annoyance, or maybe fear, crossed his face. I don't know what you're talking about. I have work to do. I left, but my suspicion only grew. The next day, Chen Yiling's family arrived. Her parents, both grieving, and a younger woman I guessed was her sister. I introduced myself. I'm Dr. Lin. I'm so sorry for your loss. Her mother nodded, eyes full of tears. Thank you for trying. I wanted to ask about your daughter's pendant. It's missing from her things. Her father's face darkened. That pendant is a family heirloom, blessed at Longshan Temple. Yiling never took it off. In our tradition, removing such an item before the proper rites can keep the spirit from finding peace. Could you identify it if you saw it? Of course, her mother said. There's a small chip on the Buddha's shoulder, and the cord was hand-woven by her grandmother. I promised to look for it. When I went back to the morgue, the storage room was locked. Wang was on to me. That night, I reviewed security footage. After Chen Yiling's body was delivered, Wang took charge. Hours later, he left the morgue, carrying something small. In the break room, he sat with his back to the camera, then returned, empty-handed. It wasn't proof, but it was enough. That night, I confronted Wang. I found him in the morgue, standing over an open compartment, holding a jade pendant over a body, whispering words I couldn't quite catch. What are you doing? I demanded. He spun around, startled. Dr. Lin, don't sneak up on people. What were you doing with that pendant? He pocketed it. Just checking on our newest arrival. Show me what's in your pocket. His face hardened. You're overstepping. This is my domain. This is a hospital, not your personal collection. I know you took Chen Yiling's pendant. Her family is devastated. He hesitated, then sighed. Close the door. Inside his office, he opened a drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, the pendant, chipped shoulder and all. Yes, I took it, he admitted, but not for the reasons you think. Why then? For protection, for her, and for us. He sat down, looking suddenly tired. I've worked here 43 years. I've seen things you wouldn't believe. The dead don't always rest easy, especially those who die suddenly. They linger. Blessed objects like these can help guide them to peace. I take them, use them in a ritual, then return them before the body leaves. But you didn't return Chen Yiling's. Her spirit is troubled. The ritual didn't work. She's still here, still angry. I told him about my encounters. His face grew serious. She's powerful. She's reaching out to the living. She's fixated on the pendant. Her family said it was a family heirloom, blessed by monks. That explains it. Such items become part of a person's identity. Without it, she can't find peace. Why not just return it? I tried, but every time it ends up back in my locker. She won't accept it from me. She's chosen you, Dr. Lin. You have to be the one to return it. I stared at the pendant, my rational mind rebelling. But I couldn't deny what I'd seen. What do I do? Tonight, at the quietest hour, go to her body alone. Place the pendant around her neck, say her name 3 times, and tell her she can rest. It sounded like folklore, not medicine. But I took the box. That night, at 3 a.m. Ghost. Hour, I walked the empty corridor to the morgue. The air was cold, the lights flickered. I opened compartment 23. Chen Yiling's body lay still. I placed the pendant around her neck. Chen Yiling, Chen Yiling, Chen Yiling. You can rest now. At first, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped even more. My breath turned to mist. The lights flickered, then steadied. A faint whisper. Thank you. The pendant glowed softly, bathing her in green light. Then it faded, and everything was still. The next day, her family found the pendant around her neck. They were overwhelmed with gratitude. They thought the hospital had recovered it. I didn't correct them. Wang and I exchanged a silent nod in the hallway. I never went into his storage room again. In the weeks after, I started paying more attention to the objects that came in with the dead, the rings, the amulets, the keepsakes. I realized they were more than just things. They were anchors, connections to identity and memory. I still think of myself as a rational doctor, a man of science. But Chen Yiling taught me that some things exist in the space between what we know and what we can't explain. I called my grandmother and listened as she described the rituals she performed for our ancestors. What I once dismissed as superstition now seemed like wisdom. Boundaries I hadn't known existed until I crossed one. Sometimes late at night when the hospital is quiet, I think I see movement at the edge of my vision. A patient who isn't there, a figure at the end of a hallway. Sometimes I glimpse a young woman in a hospital gown, her eyes peaceful at last. I don't fear these moments anymore. Instead, I nod in silent recognition of the thin veil between worlds. In a hospital, after all, the boundary between life and death is always near, always shifting, always just a breath away. My name is Lin Zijie. I'm 29 years old and I work as a water patrol officer in a remote mountain town in southern Taiwan. Half of me is all logic. I weigh every decision, analyze every risk. The other half, it's tied to memories and emotions. I just can't let go of my hometown or the ghosts of my past. 3 years ago, I came back home and moved into this old dormitory right by Mirror Lake. That's the town's most famous landmark. The lake is cradled by mountains, its surface so still it reflects the sky and clouds perfectly, hence the name, Mirror Lake. Only a handful of families live nearby. There's an abandoned wooden dock and a rickety old bridge that leads to a tiny island in the middle of the lake. Life here seems peaceful, but there's always this feeling that something is watching from just beyond the water's edge. My job? On paper, it's simple. I inspect the shoreline, check the water quality, make sure the embankment is holding up. And sometimes I help, out with rescue operations if someone drowns. My colleague, Zhou Zhengyu, is 2 years younger than me. He's fiercely independent, a bit high-strung, and always spinning ghost stories about the lake. Lately, he's been going on about the return of the water ghost. a shadowy figure people claim to see floating on the lake at midnight. There's also the mournful sound of the temple bell coming from the island. I laughed it off as superstition, but honestly, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Recently, though, things have changed. At night, cold winds sweep across the lake and strange ripples disturb its mirror-like surface. Just last week, a fisherman vanished. All they found was his fishing rod and a trail of wet footprints tangled up with weeds. The police searched for days but found nothing. The villagers are nervous now. They avoid the lake after sunset. One evening, while I was on patrol, I found an old wooden doll on the dock. Its face was warped by water, but its eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. My heart tightened. I remembered something my grandmother used to say when I was a kid. Never touch things that come from the lake. But curiosity got the better of me, so I picked up the doll, planning to bring it back to the office for record keeping. Back at the dorm, I looked out the window and saw the lake glowing with this eerie red shimmer. I tried to distract myself with a cup of tea, but the doll's empty gaze kept creeping back into my mind. That night, I dreamed I was standing on the lake. Suddenly, the water split open beneath me, and countless pale hands reached up, dragging me down. I woke up drenched in cold sweat, the red moon reflected in my window. For the first time, I really wondered if the lake was hiding something unspeakable. The next morning, Jung-Yu knocked on my door. His face was pale. He asked, "Did you pick up anything last night?" I hesitated, then showed him the doll. He backed away, whispering, "That's a substitute doll. When someone drowns, families make these and throw them into the lake, hoping the lake god will take the doll instead of claiming another life." He begged me to return it right away, or risk bringing misfortune on myself. I wasn't sure what to believe, but I locked the doll in my office drawer just in case. That day I found more strange things: scraps of cloth, old shoes drifting in the water, and tiny footprints leading straight into the lake. At dusk, a thin mist rose from the surface and the distant temple bell tolled faintly. Jung-Yu, looking even more shaken, warned me, "Never cross the bridge when there's mist at dusk." That night I couldn't sleep. The doll's eyes haunted my thoughts. In the middle of the night, the office alarm went off. I rushed in and found the drawer open. The doll was gone. On my desk were a few drops of water and an old yellow talisman. It was inscribed with a warning, "There is grievance beneath the lake. Do not disturb the dead." The next day, the lake felt even more sinister. Villagers reported seeing a white-robed figure floating on the water and hearing weeping at dawn. Jung-Yu and I doubled our patrols. The air around the lake grew heavy. The water began to smell strange, and fish started dying in droves. The elders gathered at the temple, burning incense and praying for peace. Now in Taiwan, burning incense is a traditional way to ask for protection from spirits, especially when people believe something supernatural is going on. I started digging through the town's old records. I found out that 30 years ago, a flood had claimed many lives. Several bodies were never recovered. The official reports called it a natural disaster, but villagers whispered about water ghosts, restless spirits trapped beneath the surface. The more I read, the more uneasy I felt. That night, I dreamed I was drowning, weeds wrapping around my legs, and a voice whispering in my ear, "Give me back my life." When I woke up, I found a red mark on my wrist as if something had grabbed me in my sleep. Outside, the lake was shrouded in mist. Things just got stranger from there. Jung-Yu told me that one night, as he passed the lake, his reflection had no face. The villagers' dogs barked furiously at the water for nights on end, then died without warning. Children in town all began having the same nightmare, someone calling their names from the bottom of the lake. The pressure built up. I started to wonder if I'd been marked by whatever haunted the lake. One night, a chi, soft tapping at my window, woke me. I opened it and saw rows of wooden dolls floating on the water, each painted with a different name, including mine. Panic rising, I rushed to the lakeshore, determined to pull the dolls out. But as I got close, the water churned violently, and pale arms shot up, grabbing at my ankles. Jung Yu arrived just in time to drag me back to shore. Shaken, we hurried back to the office, only to find an old photograph at the door, a group portrait of flood victims from 30 years ago. On the back, someone had scrawled, "There is grievance at the bottom of the lake. Blood debts remain unpaid." We started to suspect all of this was connected to that terrible flood. That night, I pored over my grandmother's diary. She had written, "Whenever the lake turns red, old grievances will resurface. Only a life for a life can appease the wrath of the dead." That's when it hit me. The vengeful spirits in the lake were looking for a scapegoat, and I'd been chosen. Things got even more intense. The water changed color, sometimes red, sometimes cloudy. Wet footprints appeared on the shore, leading into the lake and vanishing. The elders warned us in hushed voices, "The souls beneath the lake are restless. Don't go near the island." One night, a thick fog rolled in, so dense I couldn't see my own hands. Jung Yu and I got a report. Someone had heard a woman's cries coming from the island. We grabbed flashlights, talismans, and a lifebuoy and crossed the rickety bridge. Every step made the wood creak. The temple door was open and a cold wind rushed out. Inside, the lake god statue was streaked with water stains, its face blurred, and dozens of broken wooden dolls lay at its feet. Now, in Taiwan, people believe the lake god is a deity who protects the waters and the people nearby. Offerings and prayers are made to keep the spirits at peace. As we tried to leave, the lake behind us started to churn. Pale faces surfaced, eyes empty, mouths open, as if whispering secrets. Jung Yu grabbed me and we ran back to shore, barely escaping. Back at the office, I found an old newspaper on my desk. The headline read, "Mirror Lake Flood, 17 dead, bodies lost in lake." At the bottom, a single line, "The unavenged dead will claim a life under the red moon." That night I dreamed I was floating in the lake, countless hands pulling me down. In my ear the same whisper, "You, give me back my life." From that dream on, fear seeped into my bones. The lake's strange happenings became impossible to ignore. Jung Yu said he saw a blurry figure moving in his own shadow, on the water. Mr. Wang's grandson developed a fever that no doctor could explain. The elders chanted prayers in the temple, but the incense always went out. My mind started to unravel. At night I heard whispers in my ear. Even the tap water smelled faintly of blood. Passing the lake, I felt an invisible gaze pressing down, as if I might be dragged under at any moment. One morning the lake's surface was streaked with red, as if something was stirring below. The villagers whispered anxiously. Some elders claimed to see a row of white-clad figures standing on the island, their faces pale and eyes hollow. Jung Yu insisted we had to find out the truth behind the old flood, or the disaster would only get worse. We dug through old archives and interviewed survivors. We learned the flood had swept away 17 villagers, most never found. Some said that night, a red glow shone on the water, and white shadows swam beneath the surface. Afterwards, families made substitute dolls, hoping the lake god would accept them in place of the lost, but the resentment only deepened. During our search, we found an old notebook with a strange incantation. "Spirits beneath the lake, debts paid in blood. When the red moon rises, a life for a life." Jung Yu guessed this was the reason for the blood-red water and the hauntings. Just as we prepared to look deeper, tragedy struck. A young girl disappeared by the lake. All that was left were her shoes and a trail of wet footprints. Her mother's cries echoed over the still water. That night, I dreamed I was dragged into the lake's depths, surrounded by the faces of the drowned. Their mouths moved silently. "Give me back my life." I woke to find another red mark, on my wrist just like before. That's when I realized these were warnings from the vengeful spirits below. Jung Yu suggested we go to the old temple on the island to find a way to break the curse. That night, the fog was thick and the red moon hung high in the sky. We took my grandmother's talismans, her diary, and a flashlight, and crossed the bridge. With every step, I heard whispers and the sound of water plants brushing beneath us. Inside, the lake god statue was damaged, its base piled with broken dolls. Behind it, Jung-Yu found a hidden compartment with a yellowed letter. It read, "The lake god has abandoned us. The spirits cannot rest. On the night of the red moon, only a living sacrifice can appease them." We stared at each other in horror. Did this mean that every red moon, the lake spirits would choose a scapegoat? And this time it was me? As we prepared to leave, the temple doors slammed shut. A woman's cries drifted across the lake, getting closer, the air thick with the scent of blood. The mist outside grew even denser. The cries sounded like they were right beside us. Jung-Yu frantically shook the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. We retreated to the statue, desperately searching the old letter for a way out. At the end, in tiny script, it read, "What the vengeful souls seek is not just survival. Only if someone volunteers can the resentment be quelled." My heart pounded like a drum. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind, "Never touch things from the lake." All these years, the omens, nightmares, and red marks had been warnings. This calamity needed someone to bear it. In the mist, the wooden dolls began to roll on their own, making a clacking sound. Lake water seeped into the temple, icy and biting. Jung-Yu stepped back but tripped over a doll and fell. Suddenly, the lake god statue's eyes glowed red. The temperature plummeted, and a cold wind swept all the dolls toward me. The dolls wrapped around my arms and legs, and I heard countless lost souls whispering in my ears, "Give me back my life." I could barely breathe, my consciousness fading. Jung-Yu shouted my name, desperately trying to pull me free. In that life-or-death moment, a line from my grandmother's diary flashed through my mind. "Speak with sincerity, and the vengeful souls will disperse." With my last ounce of strength, I knelt before the statue and cried out, "The injustice from 30 years ago shouldn't fall on the innocent. I am willing to offer myself, to pray for the souls to be freed. Please, lake god, witness this and return peace to the villagers." As soon as I finished, a brilliant red light filled the temple. All the dolls shattered, and the vengeful whispers turned into a piercing scream. On the lake, the red moon hung high, and in the mist, a row of white-clad figures appeared. Their faces were no longer tormented, but peaceful. The lake water slowly receded, and the temple doors creaked open. Jung-Yu rushed to help me up. I was weak, but the crushing weight on my shoulders had lifted. We walked out of the temple and looked back. The lake god statue's eyes were clear. Again, the broken dolls turned to dust. The lake was calm, the red moon gone. Silence returned. The village dogs stopped barking, and the elders said the water tasted sweet again. The villagers gathered at the shore, burning incense and giving thanks for the lake god's protection. Jung-Yu and I returned to our dorm, silent except for our heavy breathing. The calamity seemed to be over, but I knew there were still secrets deep in the lake. Late that night, I dreamed of the lake bottom again. This time, countless white figures smiled at me, whispering, "Thank you." Since that night, the strange happenings by the lake faded away, and the villagers' lives returned to normal. The water became clear, fish swam in schools again. Jung-Yu resigned, saying he could never face his reflection in the lake. I stayed on, guarding the lake and the names that had vanished. Sometimes, late at night, I hear faint bells from the lake, as if someone is whispering from far away. Whenever the red moon rises, I light incense by the shore and pray in silence. The elders say the lake god has forgiven us, but the secrets at the bottom should never be disturbed. Every now and then, footprints appear by the lake that don't belong to this era, leading into the water and vanishing. I know some souls may still be waiting for true peace. It seems the story ends here. But whenever night falls over Mirror Lake, and the red moon's reflection glimmers, I remember those whispers and silent calls in the night. The legend at the bottom of the lake will never truly end.